everyone, and welcome to Chatty AF, the Anime Feminist podcast. My name's Amelia, and I'm joined today by Dee and Peter to talk about the spring 2017 season. So, you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi, I am Dee Hogan, a writer and editor for Anime Feminist, and I'm also the owner of the anime blog, The Josei Next Door.
And I'm Peter Phobia, and I'm an associates features editor at Crunchyroll and a contributor and editor for Anime Feminist.
Okay, so we're talking about the season that's just ended, spring 2017. We actually did reviews of all the premieres for this season for all the full-length shows for adults, and there weren't sequels. And we are now going to go back to our rankings of these premieres. We're going to look at the top 10 and talk about which ones we carried on watching, which ones we dropped, which ones we'd recommend, and why. I think it's been a bit of a difficult season for that. We've just gone through the list, and there's not a lot that we've all seen. So if we've missed something that you think we should have given more attention and you'd like to recommend to the AniFem community, please do let us know. We would love to pass that on. Okay, so we're starting off at number 10 on our rankings list, which will be in the show notes. If you check there, there'll be a link. The Royal Tutor, harmless fun category. Dee, I know for a fact you've seen this. Peter, did you watch, did you say you watched half of it?
I dropped out early, like 2 or 3 episodes.
Okay, sorry. And yeah, I haven't seen past the first 6. So, Dee, if you would like to tell us how this went by the end.
It was really good and charming, and
Yay.
I would happily recommend it. Yeah, no,
fantastic. This is a good start.
The final... Yeah, it is. It is a good start. The final 2 episodes are kind of like an anime original sort of like finishing arc, and they're not great. They don't do anything like actively like betraying like the themes or like problematic stuff or anything like that. Like they're harmless in that sense. It just doesn't quite click with the rest of the show. Other than that, though, it's delightful. I like immediately went out and bought the first volume of the manga because that's how much it charmed me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. It was... I mean, I tend to just like cute, nice comedies anyway, and that was kind of where this one started. And then the more I got into it, the more I realized it was actually a fairly thoughtful series. It does a lot in terms of talking about, not judging people by appearances. There's a lot of kind of low-key tension between like the upper like royal class and then like the sort of commoner class. I know Lauren wrote a piece on how the show handles privilege in one episode for AniFem, which I really enjoyed that piece she wrote for us.
She did, and actually we had someone tell us just recently that because of that article, they went back and watched the Royal Tutor to the end, and they were really pleased that they did. So thank you, Lauren.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, that makes me happy. It's a very nice show, and it's not. It ended up being kind of feminist relevant, not necessarily in terms of like women's issues, because there are no women in the story really. There's like a grandma. There's a grandma and a cute and they have like a really little sister. She's like 6, and she's cute. And there's an episode where she's kind of a major character, but it's not really a story about women.
Old women
but it's
and young
fine
women
because
are still women, Dee.
No, I agree with you. My point is that they're just like, they're not really in the show. They're all together. They're maybe in 30 minutes total of the entire 12 episodes.
Right.
They're not really there.
Okay.
But it touches on feminist issues in terms of intersectional feminism, I think, very well in how it does handle some of these privilege issues, some of these issues of prejudice. There's a character who, there's a whole episode with him where basically people kind of immediately assume he's dangerous because he has kind of a scary face and doesn't know how to like communicate or emote very well.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of an entire episode about him sort of trying to figure out how to communicate with others and like, get over that sort of like initial knee-jerk first impression. And it's just very, very sweetly done. And it's not like it rides that line, so it doesn't go into like being like totally saccharine and kind of just cheesy, but it still hits some nice emotional beats in between like all the silly chibi antics. So I recommend it without any real reservations.
That's amazing. That's not quite what I was expecting from beginning this list. So fantastic.
Nope.
Really pleased to hear that.
It was definitely a surprise.
Okay, I'm definitely going to go back and watch that one when I get through my immense back catalogue list. Okay, next up was the Feminist Potential category. where we thought that it could go either way, basically. So yeah, there's some potential here to explore feminist themes, but there's also potential for it to just fall off a cliff. So number 9 was Tsukigakirei, and we said that there's... I wrote the review for this one. I said there was inevitable character growth for the female lead, which was definitely going to be relatable and interesting. I wasn't sure it was going to be matched by the male lead. They're both middle school kids. They seem to be going to a romance together, and I wasn't sure if that was going to be matched or if it was just going to be him staying amazing and her developing and growing to reach his level, which obviously isn't as great. Turns out it wasn't like that at all. I was really pleasantly surprised by Tsukigakirei. I didn't think I'd like it. It's really kind of slow paced and gentle, and it's about middle schoolers in a romance, which is not really compelling for me in general. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was something that I looked forward to every single week. So, Peter, you'd watched this one, didn't you?
Yes, I really liked it as well.
Yeah.
I think I'd say I'd liked it on its own, but I also sort of liked it in the larger context of what you usually get from romance in anime, which is just a bunch of really wild shit happening all the time, and it's not very satisfying. At least when, it's like a rom-com focused type thing. This one I thought was a lot more focused on character than circumstance, I guess is what I'd say. It mainly focused on the fact that and like I know middle schooler romance isn't like a very compelling concept for me either, but it kind of focused on anxiety specifically related to, both the characters seem to have a lot of general anxiety, but also just like normal anxieties, like how middle schoolers would sort of approach romance since they don't have any experience with it. So it was a lot of overcoming certain barriers that they were entirely unfamiliar with, like firsts, that kind of thing, and then I guess there was a little bit of circumstantial drama with her moving away. But I really liked the sort of introspective element to the anime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only issue I had with it was right up to the end. The female lead, Akane, her best friend, Chinatsu, was a very difficult character because she crossed so many lines of trust with Akane and then just said, but we're still friends, right? Even though I like your boyfriend, even though I'm telling your boyfriend that I like him, we're still friends, right? And Akane always said yes, and I understand that, but that was kind of hard to watch. So yeah, that's my only caveat there is that there was a little bit of the idea that, I don't know, she was just being really kind of manipulative, and I don't think it was intentional, but it was it was hard to watch. That's all I'll say. But everything else was gorgeous.
She was kind of like, I guess in retrospect, I sort of appreciate that she was kind of a source of anxiety without ever being like the real threat that you'd get if this was like, what's an anime that would be a good example? Like Masamune-kun, where it's just like, the new person arrives, something like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked how the whole ending was really good. It had a lot more closure than I'm used to in just about any high school anime.
I was so impressed by that because I got spoiled for the facts of the ending and I was very unhappy. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, that was amazing. So it completely won me over in that final episode.
They did it pretty elegantly with the closing sequence, I think.
They did. So I would recommend this. I think you may want to skip the post-credits cartoons. They are a little less feminist friendly. But if you watch up to the closing credits and then just skip to the next episode in your marathon, you'll be fine. So that would be my one caveat there.
And the closing credits in the last episode are very important as well.
Yes, so
those are must-watch, actually.
Those are must-watch. Else, you'd lose out on quite a lot. So yeah, definitely Tsukigakirei recommendation with a couple of caveats, but nothing major, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 8, Alison Zoroku, which this stood out as the premiere review I found the absolute hardest to write because I struggled so much with the premiere, double-length premiere, that I didn't enjoy at all. So I didn't watch any more of this. Peter, Dee, did you review? Cover it?
I watched half of it.
Okay.
Which I kind of had said was probably going to be what I did when we did our kind of mid-season check-in.
Yeah.
which I will kind of just direct people to that because my opinion hasn't really changed since then. Basically, like I wasn't sure, and then I kind of got into it, and then it had a really good stopping point, and I did not feel compelled to keep going. So I was like, I guess the story's over, and I just stopped watching.
Fair enough. Peter, did you watch on?
Yeah, I finished it all.
You don't sound too happy about that.
Well, I think the first arc was definitely the strongest.
Yeah.
And after that, it kind of just entered into this sort of like episodic, like she runs into the twins again, and then she runs into some other people that also have dreams of Alice. And there's always some sort of element of, stress or something revolving around that. I think like dreams of Alice probably come to troubled people is the idea. So it was just kind of like a bunch of minor stories that were riding on the back of Sana living with Zoroku's family. And near the end, it kind of got into this weird territory where I'm not quite sure where there. I feel like there's like a larger context that the animes or probably the manga's trying to get into, where she starts like bringing the Wonderland that she had, in the facility, whatever. And she like makes doors to it that she can access from everywhere, which was pretty interesting. So she starts like messing with people by like dropping them through doors and putting them in cages with stuffed animals around them and stuff like that. It's like traps. Yeah, it got really bizarre and kind of surreal near the end. Really cool backgrounds.
Oh, I love surreal.
Yeah,
so sorry.
Yeah, it's your favorite thing.
I
Right up there with cute girls.
Surreal and moe character designs. Count me in.
Yeah. Sorry, but it kind of, I guess it was, it wasn't bad enough that I stopped watching, but it just kind of, I don't think there was a lot of stress after that. Maybe with the last story, it got into kind of like a dark territory, but it was like for this character that they had just introduced. So, and then I think it ended with like, but our battle continues kind of thing, which usually just means, hey, go read the manga. So I guess it was okay after that.
Oh, wow. Sparkling recommendation there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like the first arc, you'll probably like the second arc, but the stakes aren't that high. So after that, it's just kind of like a slice of life where there's random superpower kind of fights.
That was kind of what I thought was going to happen, so I'm really glad I ducked out when I did. Good job, past me.
Okay, let's move on to one we have all seen. Number 7. Kado.
How do we even talk about this?
How do we talk about this? Okay, so Kado, in the review, we talked about, the premiere review, we talked about how there were prominent professional women in this mostly male-led cast, and there was potential there for the female characters in particular to be quite a presence and to do quite interesting things. So that was the basis of saying it had feminist potential. In the end, it turned into something quite different than it started out. And Peter, you wrote an article about this, right? Could you just summarise what you were saying in that article about its change of tone?
Well, I don't know if it was exactly a good thing that I was like the sort of change. The thrust of it was like, kind of a very ambitious anime in regards to the 3D and the kind of larger societal context of the story, which I think, given the twist, was kind of a unique thing to do, since it sort of set this really big stage and had Zashinina and Shindo working together to sort of develop character intimacy, and like their friendship, and like once we get to the twist, that ends up being very like it creates emotional impact because of this relationship that we've been following for like I think it was 9 episodes at that point. Mm-hmm. So I felt like as far as narrative structure, that was good, and like the beginning 9 episodes were good, but just the way that the plot went after that was sort of insane. Like I did not see it coming, because I didn't think that there was any reason anybody would decide to take it in that direction, basically.
Yeah, because the opening is really a focus on this process of negotiation and looking at issues such as energy resources, and that was a really interesting set of philosophical questions, and it seemed like that was going to be the way the series would go. We would be looking at questions about humanity and about what would you do if an alien invader showed up but then offered you everything you need, offered you a life without sleep, with infinite energy. What would you do? How would society as a whole react? And then suddenly it shifts completely into something very, very different. And actually, I had been a bit lost by that point, and that twist picked me right back up again, and I quite enjoyed it until the final episode. Dee, what did you feel about the twist it had?
I liked it.
Yeah.
The messier the show got, the more involved I became with it. And I still think there is something like I think it's one of those kind of ambitious failures that's trying to do a lot and doesn't really put it all together, and so I feel kind of guilty recommending it, but I still really liked it.
Yeah, totally understand.
Because I do sort of enjoy the some of the directions they went with kind of their conversation about cultural exchange were very interesting to me. I liked that the female characters did end up having more of a role and kind of being right. Which was interesting. And then I think I find it sort of amusingly apt that a story that begins at like this like emotional distance, like very logical discussion of the pros and cons, it turns out that when it comes to humanity, it really just boils down to feelings, to like gut reactions and emotions and relationships. And I thought that was kind of, again, like it was messy, but it just worked for me.
It got really messy in the last episode, though. So I felt quite bad because I think it was Vry put up some screenshots and described it as the Hannibal of anime. Or was that you, Dee?
No, that was
you or
Vry was the one who said Alien Hannibal. I'm the one who has been pushing the dating sim theory since like episode 9.
That's it. And actually, calling it a dating sim really contextualized it for me and made me go, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I can watch it and enjoy it. So, you know,
it's a really good dating sim.
Do it.
It's a really good dating sim. Turns out
it's a really good dating sim. But I retweeted this screenshot that Vry put up where they said Alien Hannibal, and one of my real life friends saw that and was like, I have to watch this because Hannibal's great. And so she watched the first episode. She's like, what have you done to me, Amelia? What is this? And then we got to the twist and she was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then we watched the final episode together. And you have never seen two more disgusted anime viewers in your life. We were just, what is this shit? Every few seconds. It was not a pleasant viewing experience. And we got to the end and we're like, well, that's that then. Okay, move on, don't watch it again. But it was a really ambitious show, as you say, and I do appreciate some aspects of it, but like you, I don't feel like I could recommend it to anyone, especially not after that experience, recommending it to someone. Mm-hmm. Okay, next one on the list is WorldEnd, which had like marginalized characters in a pretty gender balanced cast. So we thought, okay, if it actually looks at the marginalization, if the gender balance remains kind of not creepy, then that'll be really good. How did it go? Did anyone see this to the end?
Yeah.
I got a little over halfway through it. Pretty much just like right over the halfway point. And
okay, Peter, how was it?
Well, it delivered on the promise from the opening scene of the first episode.
Okay.
I mean, we all had that big discussion about how we didn't like the massage scene. They recycled that joke twice later on.
That was what made me decide to drop it, actually.
Yeah.
Twice?
Well, it was two girls, one scene, basically.
Oh my god! Did you have to?
Why did you have to word it that way?
Yeah. With Kathali watching the entire thing, actually.
Oh my god!
Very unhappily. Yeah, and then they, the way they talk about it later makes it sound like it wasn't massage either, so that was great.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah. But I guess all of us were kind of hoping that it would kind of avoid the Willem Kathali romance, I think, and that was definitely the centerpiece of the show. So, yeah, it kind of got into that. The ending, basically what the endings... I mean, the opening scene basically said this is going to be a tragedy. It's not going to end well. And that is what happens.
It is a tragedy that doesn't end well. Okay.
Yeah, and it got into some weird stuff with, like, past lives and what's going on with Kathali, like hearing children's voices and stuff like that, which was really strange. I hear the light novel actually ended in the same place, and I think it's kind of implied that, what was her name? Nephrin, the Kudere, purple-haired girl. I think that was.
Oh yeah, name. I think she just went by Ren, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So, Kathali, does her disappearance, and I think it sort of implied that that girl and Willem kind of wander off together or something like that. Apparently there's a follow-up or light novel about the green-haired girl, Tiat, the one who's really into lizard folk movies.
She was cute.
Yeah, so maybe that one's better, but I guess the series just decided to end it off there, which really seems bizarre because there was this like huge context in regards to the world, like all these stakes, and it turned out that the nature of Catholics, like seeing past stuff, was really, really, really important in like maybe the fate of the world. But it just sort of wrapped up their personal romance tragedy thing, and then kind of just dropped us. So,
wow, that's a big bummer.
Yeah.
So, not a recommendation then.
If you watch the first episode and really want to know how it gets to the final scene that is the first scene, maybe you'll like it.
That was a non-statement, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really into like tragedy stuff happening, I guess,
Okay.
and some people are, and if you're okay with the Cathali Willem thing, then I'd say maybe it's good. If you like the Cathali Willem thing and love tragedy,
This one is for you.
and don't mind sexualized massage scenes, then maybe if you're like in that Venn diagram, sure. Outside of that, it's kind of was, I don't know. I didn't really I didn't feel satisfied by the ending, I should say. I liked what was happening, but it didn't leave you off in a satisfying place. You're just like, oh well, it's over, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very specific recommendation there. Okay, moving on. Number 5, Recreators, which had powerful female characters challenging anime tropes. Now, I watched this at the premiere, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I made comments about anime of the year at the time. I was very enthusiastic about it. And then I lost interest quite quickly. So don't trust me when I say something might be anime of the year. Just don't listen. I haven't kept up with this, and I think I was the only one with access to it through Amazon in the UK. So we should probably move on from that. But I have since had it independently recommended to me by multiple people I trust, who know very well about my work with Anifem and so on. So worth checking out, maybe. I loved the first episode. I really, really loved the first episode, and if it delivers on what I identified there as being particularly attractive to me, then I think from a feminist perspective it's very worth watching. And I did enjoy subsequent episodes that I watched, but I don't know how it ended, so I'm sorry.
How it was described to me was like the Fate series, except with more female agency and a less ridiculously complex story that's based on like a light novel which goes in 8 different directions.
That honestly sounds like something I would love. I kind of like Fate when it's more focused than like the Fate Stay Night anime. Like I really enjoyed Fate Zero, so
I think Fate's good when it's not Stay Night is the thing. Stay Night was the worst Fate.
We're gonna get so much hate letters from that. Peter,
sorry,
what have you done to us? What have you done?
What was that red-haired kid? I'm sorry, he's a bad character.
Please direct all hate on this subject to Crunchyroll.
Yeah, I mean, no, just at me. I don't even care. At Peter Phobian. Bring it.
It's like,
an
I will
awful
fight
anime.
you over how Fate Stay Night's bad.
Stay Night was garbage. Zero was good. I also liked Umbral Star.
Thank you for joining the Anime Feminist podcast on Fate.
Yeah, I'll watch Apocrypha when I have the ability, but Stay Night was definitely the low point of Fate.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but anyway.
Recreators. All I can say is that I haven't heard of it blowing up anywhere. I haven't heard of it falling off a cliff and people going, oh no, I can't believe I was watching this. What I've heard has generally been that it's a bit on the wordy side, a bit exposition-y sometimes. But from a feminist view, nobody has kind of said to me, oh, Amelia, you can't believe what Recreators has done. You made the right call not watching it anymore. And people often do that for me, which I really appreciate, by the way. If you get in touch with me and
that's
say...
handy. Yeah.
Sorry?
I said, that's handy.
It's really handy. So sometimes they come up to me and say, Amelia, don't bother with that. I was like, thank you very much. But that hasn't happened with Recreators, so maybe worth a watch if you have access to it, which, as we know, may not be the case. So moving on to the next category, which is feminist themes. So these, you wouldn't necessarily describe them as feminist or necessarily feminist friendly, but they explore certain themes that are absolutely within the remit of intersectional feminism. So the first example is Granblue Fantasy at number 4, where they had a consistent emphasis in the first episode, or the first 2 episodes I should say, because they were both released at the same time, on agency and consent that I thought was absolutely fascinating, and I really was hoping that they would explore that more, and then I stopped watching. I did mean to go back to it. This season has been a really hard one for me to keep on top of everything because I've changed job, and that's had a big impact on me. Mm-hmm. But it's not because I didn't enjoy the opening. I actually thoroughly enjoyed those first couple of episodes. So did either of you watch that to the end?
I got halfway through.
Okay. Yeah, I did too. I started to get the sense that it was going to basically be a big old advertisement for the video game, and we weren't going to really get like a proper ending or proper character arcs. So I decided to wait and see. And I had a friend who was watching it, and he said, "Yep, that is exactly what happened." Right. And to top it off, apparently there was a final like bonus episode where, because in the video game you can your main character can be Gran the boy, or I forget the other character's name. You can play as a boy or a girl, basically. And apparently in the very final like special episode they swap out Gran for the female character. Okay. Like it's kind of like an AU, which sounds like, oh, maybe they'll do something neat with that. No, it was solely so they could do a beach episode.
No.
Yep.
No. Don't do this, anime. Don't do it.
Goddamn.
Yeah, and when he told me that, I was like, I just want to throw things right now. So, dropping that halfway through turns out to have been an okay plan.
I am not going back to that. You have just lost my massive amounts of support. Yeah. Okay, that's really disappointing. Although now I think about it, I did see a thumbnail with bikinis in it and think, So, yeah, good to know that was a totally justified and plot-driven episode with bikinis. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, for me, it was just kind of vanilla and boring to me.
That is also true.
It was inoffensive,
right.
But it also didn't really interest me. I mean, say what you will about Magical Girl Racing Project, say that it was awful, say that it was poorly written, say that it was disgusting, but at least it tried to do something interesting with the IP that it was trying to advertise.
Right.
And also there was I can't remember, there was even a fantasy series earlier this year which kind of did something interesting. I can't remember what its name is. It was also based off like a gacha mobile game, but it like starts with like the main character he's basically going to die, I guess, so... it did some interesting, like the villain wins, he's got like some sort of disease that's eating away at him, and then that's like the stories start. So you're just like, oh wow, there's kind of like a fatalistic story, I guess, or like he's trying to do something, but he's gonna die no matter what, that kind of thing. Maybe he like miraculously cures himself with victory energy or something, I don't know, but like it was compelling, right? And the Granblue, it just felt so they were just introducing characters and having fights, and then getting in a ship, and then having more fights. And nothing about the plot really grabbed my attention, and so I stopped watching.
I did get the sense that it was a series that was more about come live in this world and hang out with these characters for a while. Like, that was the point of appeal. So if you enjoyed the world building and the art and the characters appealed to you, then just hanging out with them for 24 minutes a week, that was what you would get out of it.
Fantastic animation, too.
There was some really good animation in there. No, there really were some like excellent looking fight sequences. A1 did a good job. It ended up like, because honestly my thing at the start was like, well, it's kind of a vanilla fantasy, but I sort of like the characters, so I'll have fun just kind of hanging out with them and getting to know them. But then they introduced new people like every freaking episode, so you didn't really get a chance to chill with, like, because there's kind of like a solid core like 4-person cast by the end of like the 4th episode or something. And I was like, these guys are fun, this seems like a good group to hang out with. And then they started adding new characters like immediately, and you didn't get to hang out with those people you thought seemed like they'd be interesting to hang out with. So that was one of the reasons I stopped, because I was like, okay, if it's too core, then they'll have time to flesh these people out eventually, but if it's gonna just end, then what's the point? So sorry, Granblue, we're being like maybe unnecessarily mean to you right now.
Do you know what though? If there's an ending, a bonus episode involving bikinis in this medieval setting, then I don't feel like we're being that mean. To be honest.
Fair.
True. So if you want to watch good vanilla fantasy, Lodoss War has always been there.
I have never seen it. Maybe I should.
Oh my god. Okay. We're doing it.
We'll pick that up later.
That's probably something we should do. Yeah.
Okay, watch along upcoming. Number 3, Kabukibu. I know none of you have seen this. Am I right?
I wanted to, but no.
D. You will love this.
Okay, I
You will
sure
love
hope I
this
can
show.
watch it someday.
I sure hope you can too. It breaks my heart that I can't talk about this with you or Vry, because this is right up your street. Okay, I haven't seen all of this. I saw, because I kind of caught up before the podcast. I thought, oh no, I haven't seen it. So I watched a couple of later episodes to see, does it seem to continue in the same vein? It does seem to continue in the same vein. It is a really delightful show about a sweet group of kids, and they have their kabuki club at school, and there is a lot of kind of playing with gender performance, which I really appreciate. So in kabuki, the cast is traditionally all male, and they decided, well, actually, we're a high school club, so we don't have to do that. So there are various combinations of female characters, within the context of the show, there are female students playing male characters, there's male students playing female characters, there's female students playing female characters, which is in itself subversive, because that would normally have been a man. And they have characters who appear very masculine but behave in ways that are more traditionally feminine, and vice versa. And it just seems like a really comfortable series to
sounds really nice.
It's really nice, and the whole way through you've got this exploration of kabuki, and it's a completely different kind of context from Shogen no Kuraku or Shinju, which is a kind of this historical narrative, very sweeping. This is a bunch of high school kids saying, well, actually the rules don't apply to us, so what rules do we need to break in order to get our high school classmates interested in this art form that we like? And it starts off with this one boy saying, I really need people around me, we can just make it happen, we can put on kabuki, and he faces so much kind of opposition to that idea. And then over the course of the series, they kind of realize along the way which barriers to comprehension and appreciation exist. And they find ways to break them down using just modern ways of thinking, modern technology. It's a really sweet show. I haven't seen all of it, so if there's something problematic in there that I've missed, please do tell me, our listeners. But from what I've seen, it was just delightful. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I absolutely am going to go through and watch the episodes I missed, because it is just so much fun. So that is my recommendation with that slight caveat. Steve, I'm so sorry. I feel really bad now.
No, it sounds great. Good.
Yeah.
It sounds really good.
It does sound really good. Okay, Sakura Quest, number 2. I stopped watching this very early on, but I really appreciated its concept. And now I've seen Shirobako, actually, maybe I should go back and watch Sakura Quest kind of from that perspective. But basically, the first episode kind of challenged this narrative of princesses with an adult female lead in a workplace situation, which, as we know, that combination is quite rare. And she didn't seem to be sexualized in any way. And she was technically the princess of this town for tourist purposes, but she actually had a job, and she had to work hard, and she had to work with people who were quite difficult. And it looked like an intriguing setup, but this hasn't been a great season for me for keeping on top of things. For you guys, seen it?
I dropped it halfway through.
Why did you drop it?
I felt like, especially since we were watching Shirobako at the time, it kind of felt more and more tragic to me that I really wasn't connecting with Sakura Quest in any way.
Yeah, because I would have expected this to be right up your street, actually. I know it has things in it that you really appreciate about anime. So I was quite surprised when you said you dropped it.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I intentionally decided I'd stop watching it. I just never decided, hey, I never felt like, oh, hey, I want to watch it right now. Right. It just kind of, I felt like there weren't really big stakes. Like the failure just meant everything would continue as it had been previously.
Right.
I didn't really connect with the characters in the same way, and they're outside of that one. I can't remember. I don't remember her name. It's the older woman who doesn't like the tourist board. She seems to be the only real antagonist. And then I couldn't really get a beat on this setting either, because they were it was the very modern day, but then they had mech suits with the carved wooden armor on them, and it just got really bizarre. So it's intentionally defied kind of what you would think would be normal for the modern day a lot of times.
Mech suits?
Yeah, the guy, there's that one guy, he makes these...
They're exoskeletons, basically.
Yeah, he has those exoskeletons that are supposed to allow people to lift a lot of weight.
Yeah.
That I guess is something. they're developing in Japan, but it's this guy working in like out of his garage
middle
in
of
the
nowhere,
middle of rural Japan. Yeah. So, and he made it himself with elbow grease and stuff. So,
okay.
It just kind of like, if you can do that, why are you a small town?
I did think that too when they showed that guy with like all his really neat inventions. I was like, I don't understand why. Anyway, but yeah.
Why are you there?
Yeah, so just barriers, I guess, to me really connecting with this series was the problem.
Dee, you watched it to the end. Is that because you connected with it, or was it just obligation?
Well, it's ongoing. It's 2-4,
okay.
So it's not to the end. I've watched it to the middle. And it was one of those, I feel this is going to, okay, so I would like, if you are at all interested in it, give it a try. I recommend it. There's no caveats. It handles, it's 5 young women in their ranging in a variety of their 20s, trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, basically, in the context of, and then sort of their relationship with the location they are in, this town. And each of them kind of have their own different conflict. All of them are very true to life, and sometimes painfully so. It's done. It's done with nuance. It's done with sympathy. It's good. Like it's low key, very good. I think in terms of what it does in its story. So I want to start by saying that I would recommend it. Try it out. Definitely try it out. It's one of those where when I'm watching it, I enjoy it, and then I kind of just immediately forget I'm watching it.
Okay.
It doesn't. I have not really been able to connect with it in the way I want to. I really want to love this show. Because it has a lot of things in it that I normally would, and there's just something there that's keeping me from like really latching on to the story and the characters within it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and I know that. So that's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I'm damning it with faint praise. But it's that's just kind of where I am with it. Like, I'm not personally super duper excited about it, but I am still watching it. I'm interested in the story. From sort of kind of just like a sort of not distant, I guess critical perspective a little bit.
Right.
The way it handles the characters' arcs and their sort of quarter life crises is interesting to me. It just very rarely connects on an emotional level, and I think it wants to more than it is. So in that respect, it is a little bit of a failure, I guess.
Okay. And it sounds like it has been for all of us. I mean, I assumed I would love this, and I put it at number 2 in the rankings, and then just never felt compelled to watch more. Mm-hmm. And I love shows about women in the workplace where they're not being sexualized. That's a real thing that I kind of latch on to and always appreciate, and just it has never been compelling for me to keep watching. So I have watched a few episodes, but it was for obligation, and I obviously didn't go back to it. And it feels a shame. It's a bit frustrating. So if they pick up in the second half, because I felt that way about Shirobako at first, actually. The first few episodes did not grab me, and had I watched it for just personal reasons, then I might not have got as far as I did, in all honesty. But because we did it for a watch along, I kept watching, and then it got so good.
Yeah.
And I think it must have been like episodes 7 to 12 where I really began to appreciate it. But that's quite a way away. I mean, that's quite a big commitment to ask somebody to stick around that long, because it might get better. And if Sakura Quest has kind of gone beyond that, if it's actually, episodes 13 to 18 or where it really gets good, then that's quite an ask. But do, keep watching it and let us know if it changes, if it does become more engaging, or if there are specific issues that it explores that we would want to talk about. And then I would absolutely go back and rewatch it. Or rewatch it and watch it at all.
Yeah. By this point, like, Shirobako had some like soaring emotional highs that I just never saw in Sakura Quest. So
yeah, Sakura Quest
it doesn't sound like they're there either.
Yeah, Sakura Quest had a couple of really good beats with one scene where 2 of the girls are talking about. I mentioned this in the mid-season too. One scene where one of the girls is talking about how she worked herself into the ground and then got sick and then realized that anyone could do her job. That was a pretty good, that they handled that one really well in terms of like staging and pacing, and that was a solid beat. And then there's an arc later with the youngest, I think she's the youngest in the group, about how she kind of feels like an outcast because she's into like weird things like UFOs and monsters, and she gets like yelled at one point because quote unquote I think basically somebody tells her normal girls aren't into stuff like that. And then like her friends are like, no, we think your interests are neat, like we like you, we like the stuff you like, and so her finding that community is also really sweet. So there's moments in it that kind of stand out, but then there's a lot of just kind of this like straight level of not really hitting strong emotional beats. Yeah, it doesn't have quite the energy that Shirobako has, and I think that comes down partly to the writer-director duo.
On the other hand, I feel quite sorry for Sakura Quest that its natural point of comparison is Shirobako, which is quite a special series.
Yeah, and they really don't, like, other than being... PA Works has kind of a... they call it, like, their working women series, I think, and they did, because they did Hanasaku Iroha a while back as well.
Yeah.
And it was specifically they wanted to do stories about female characters with jobs, which I think is a really cool thing to kind of want to focus on, because you don't see that as much in anime as... Sorry, what?
I said absolutely. Yeah, no, that's something I'd love to see.
So, but unfortunately, because it is part of like kind of a series of these sorts of shows, I think you inevitably wind up with comparisons, especially when you've got like the same character designer. So everyone kind of looks the same. And that's maybe not fair to Sakura Quest, but yeah, it's not, it does not have the raw charm and energy of Shirobako, I would say.
But you would recommend it without caveats, and
there's no caveats to it except that I'm just not in love with it, and I wish I was.
That's doing quite well, to be fair. If we can say it's exploring feminist issues and it has good characters, it's not engaging, but it is absolutely worth watching. That's doing pretty well for an anime, to be fair. Yeah. So maybe we should judge it less by is it better or not as good as Shirobako, and more as this is actually a solid series. And just because we don't find it engaging doesn't mean that nobody does. I'm sure there's people out there who absolutely love it. So, if you're listening, tell us what you love about it. We'd love to see it through your eyes.
Agreed.
Okay, number 1, Grimoire of Zero. I'm sounding all because I haven't seen this one completely either. I did skip to the end. I watched the last episode before the podcast just to see kind of where it ended up, and to see whether the themes of power and discrimination, which had real parallels to racism from my perspective, to see how they were addressed. And I obviously couldn't follow it properly because I hadn't seen the intervening episodes, but my understanding is it's not really addressed, so it just ends in a place where it could continue, and it could get a second series, which maybe is how they've set it up.
Yeah. Well, it's based on a light novel series, right?
So that they're probably, I think that's like volume
ongoing.
2. Yeah. Okay. So they've set it up to be continued, but they didn't actually address what I wanted them to address, which was you've got this main character who is a beast fallen. He is in I can't remember what exact animal it is, but it's a giant cat. He's in a giant cat's body. But he views himself as human, and he wants people to see who he really is. And he joins this companion, and she's a witch, and she tells him, "I can see the human that you are, and I'll change you. I'll reveal that for you if you help me." That's her price. And he says, "Yes, absolutely. That's what I want in the world. That's all I want." And then you get to the end of the series, and I was really hoping that over the series there'd be this progression where he realizes actually he doesn't need to have a human facade on him to feel like he is himself. I was hoping that he'd get more comfortable in his own skin, and it would get to a point where perhaps she'd offer to change him, and he'd say, "No, actually, I'm quite comfortable as I am." Spoilers, that doesn't happen. So that's a real shame for me. So even though they raised this feminist theme, they didn't actually explore it in a feminist way. And that's why this whole segment is called Feminist Themes, because there is absolutely no guarantee that it's going to go in a particularly feminist direction. So I will watch the intervening episodes at some point, although my wish to do so has dropped a bit since finding that out. But I don't imagine that they will have explored it in any great depth if it seems like he's gone on absolutely no character development at all in this area. It seems like it was just raised as a motivation for him, and then he was in exactly the same place 12 episodes later. So that's a bit of a shame. If I'm wrong, again, listeners, please tell me. I would love to know. But yeah, my understanding is that there's no development there. So not sure if I'd recommend that one. I think definitely worth watching the first episode at least. I enjoyed the first 6, which I've seen. But I think there are other shows here that I would recommend more enthusiastically. Kabukibu is probably my big recommendation of this list, and Tsukigakirei. Yeah, that's... I wish I had more to say on it. I feel really bad that I couldn't see all the episodes. Mm-hmm. But that is our top 10 of the rankings. It's been a bit of a difficult season, I think. It's been a bit of a struggle, this one. There hasn't been anything that I've been shouting from the rooftops about as I have done in previous seasons. So that has been a bit frustrating, I think. Yeah.
It feels like a lot of shows started strong and then kind of just either sort of went downhill or just kind of lost any sort of energy.
Yeah, it's exactly how it feels. But those were not the only shows this season. We also had a number of sequels, which we have been shouting from the rooftops about because that has been strong. So I'm just going to dive right in. My Hero Academia, it took until this season for me to really grasp just how strong a series it is and how interesting it is and how relatively feminist friendly it is compared to other shonen. And I have to be really careful with those caveats because it is by no means a feminist series. It still suffers from many of the trappings of shonen manga, shonen anime, and specifically the Shonen Jump set. But it is an improvement on its predecessors, and I say that as someone who loves Naruto with all my heart. It absolutely does new things, and it is doing them in a fresh way that is really just so endearing, and I absolutely love it. And I think you're both watching it and enthusiastic about it.
Super enthusiastic. I think it might be, like, One Piece is pretty high up on that pedestal, so is Hunter x Hunter for me personally, but I think My Hero's already unseated Naruto, and I don't know where on my top 3 list of shonen it's going to end up, but it could definitely be the top.
Dear, you watching it?
Yeah, I am. I'm actually watching this one with my roommate, which is fun. I haven't seen the most recent episode, but
no, me neither.
It's really good. It has such good, compelling character arcs. Because I've talked about this in past podcasts as well. I always want to get into the big blockbuster shonen series, and then I never can, and then very rarely can I, because that kind of arc-based formatting I just kind of lose interest if I don't get a clear sense of where the story is going to end up. So you really have to have a cast of characters that I just want to hang out with and see what they're like and what they're up to. And My Hero Academia has an incredibly good cast of characters where I'm like, I want individual stories about everybody except Mineta. Fuck that guy.
Seriously.
But I would like happily watch like an entire arc about pretty much everyone in that class. Yeah. And I think that, and heck, I'd watch an entire arc about most of their teachers too.
Absolutely.
And the adult characters.
Absolutely.
And I think that speaks to its potential to be a really compelling, long-running series, which at this point it's probably guaranteed to be a long one. And just one that you can just cheer for these kids and watch them grow and enjoy their stories. So yeah, I have been surprised at how much I have liked it, I think.
Me too. And I watched the first season when it came out, and I didn't get to the end. I was like, it's okay, I guess. And then I caught up with it in order to watch the sequel season, and I thought, this is amazing. What stopped me from getting into it before? And I still don't really know, but I've completely fallen in love with Ochako. She is just my aspiration in life. I wish I were half as nice as Ochako is, half as strong, half as decent. She is wonderful. I'm a big fan of her. But like you say, any of the characters except Minata, I would be very happy to spend time with, to see more arcs on them, just to really dig into any of their characters. So that's such a good sign, I think. I really feel like Naruto did something similar for me, because I do love Naruto and I enjoyed arcs with many of their characters. Rock Lee is one of my all-time favorites, but it's not quite the same. There are characters who feel filler, who feel throwaway in Naruto. The female characters are underserved. I absolutely love it, but I suspect My Hero Academia is going to overtake it at some point.
Yeah, it probably will. Kishimoto, I don't think, spent as much time with his side characters as Horikoshi has.
Yeah.
I don't think that they were created with the same care. So I think he had like a pretty good concept for a lot of them, but he didn't really invest as much as Horikoshi does.
Yeah.
And Horikoshi's just doing like really great things with both the shonen genre and like Western superhero comics. That's really interesting thematically, and which we can definitely appreciate since we're sort of exposed to both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I do agree about the side. There's a lot of like fantasy books that are multiple perspective, like Song of Ice and Fire. There were some characters where it'll go to that character, like the chapter name is always the character that it's following, and I'll go, like, I have to get through this chapter, because But I feel like if it was anybody at Semineta in this one, I'd just like, okay, sweet, I'll read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, and as we've been saying, it's not perfect. I definitely wish there were more combat-oriented female characters, and I do think a lot of especially when they got to the fighting tournament portion, a lot of female characters were just kind of shoved out of the ring very fast and didn't get interesting fights.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that those problems are fixed later, since I've read ahead in the manga. I'm following the English publication. But they do, especially in the next arc, have some really good moments that are specifically related to their performance in this tournament as well.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about especially your reactions to where it goes next, and just how it's portrayed, because I really enjoyed those parts of the manga.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited.
Eccentric Family 2. You have both seen this. You have both raved about it. I have not watched it yet, but by your recommendations, I absolutely will, because it sounds incredible.
I love it. It's still one of my top 10 favorite anime.
Of all time?
The first season was, and the second one, it's not dropping it down. Like, it's still there. So
impressive.
I love it. It's such a complete package in terms of art, music, animation. I mean, the animation is somewhat sparing, but it's very effective when it's used. Character tone, like the whole thing just comes together very well to create this very specific sort of magical realism grounded in emotional realism, sort of supernatural, I guess, series. That I just love it. Basically. So it's supposedly the Eccentric Family novels that it's based on is going to be a trilogy. I dearly hope that when the third book is written, we get a third season so I can see the entire thing, because it's beautiful. Yeah,
we really want to finish Ben 10's arc, especially,
yes,
which I'm
absolutely.
almost positive the third book will be doing. Because almost like the main character is Yasaboro, but I feel like the main character in the series is Ben 10. Who's like, which is very interesting because she's so separated from all the other characters, and it's a very family and community focused series, and Ben 10's kind of like the outlier who can't participate in any of these communities or have the same relationships other characters can.
Yeah, she kind of shifts between the three kind of main groups and doesn't quite fit into any of them. And she's a really fascinating character because I don't know if I wouldn't classify her as likable, but she's very compelling and sympathetic in some ways, and just interests me, and I want to know more about her. I also like that this series kind of set up sort of a character who's in a similar situation to her in the Nidaime, who's another quasi Tengu, I guess, who also doesn't really have a group, a community. But so the way they kind of interact and butt heads and have kind of this sort of magnetism towards each other in this season is really interesting. I think it handles Peter, we can talk about this too. It's one of those where the main characters are the guys. So on the one hand, there is sort of that sense of like most of the female characters are in some way connected to, especially Yasaburo, but then also his brothers. But at the same time, I think they're all really good, like fully realized people who are more than just so-and-so's fiance or so-and-so's mom, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. I love Gyokaran, who is a new addition this season as well.
Yeah,
and,
she's
Kaisei's
great.
Been a really huge character.
Yeah, I really like Kaisei too. And they all have very distinct personalities. Gyokudan's really into shogi, and she's really good at it too. So she's got that on top of being kind of a love interest for one of the other characters. She gets angry and turns into a tiger and like just roars at people, and it's fun. I like it. It's a very charming series, and I think it handles all of its characters really well.
Yeah, I love that both of them turn into tigers as their go-to combat shape.
Yes, when they're ready to fight, they're like tiger power. It's wonderful.
That sounds really cute.
They were made for each other.
Oh yeah, their romance thing was pretty good because God, what's his older brother's name? Yashiro.
Yeah, Ichiro. Yeah,
they have
it's
very
got
similar
Ichi in the
name.
middle
Yeah,
because he's the first.
He's very bad at being emotional, so he had a lot of trouble admitting that he liked her, although everybody knew it and kind of made fun of him a lot because he kind of deserves it.
Their backstory was kind of fun too because she intentionally loses a game of shogi to him.
Yes.
Because she kind of has a crush on him and she feels like he'll be upset if she beats him, which I think is kind of ties into some kind of feminist themes.
Yeah,
he gets really upset at her about this. Like, he's like, no, I don't want you to do that. And then they eventually, like, as adults, they play again and she beats him. Like, she doesn't go easy on him. She beats him this time. And the fact that there's like that, you know, I think it's really nice that the story encourages her to be herself and play to her strengths, and he likes and he wants her to do that and likes that about her. So their relationship is a really nice kind of surprise in the first half of the series.
Yeah, there's a shogi board that has tiger teeth marks in it from when they were kids, and she lost on purpose. He went berserk and he almost bit the board in half, which is their dad's favorite. But he held onto it anyway as a sentimental item. Just a lot of really neat stuff like that. It's hard to kind of like describe why it's so good. I'd say, like, on the surface level, it's very well produced because as you said earlier, the animation and the voice acting and like the visuals all really tie in strongly to support this series that's really about like the world, the surface level and the world beneath Kyoto. But then the narrative and the characters themselves are so strong too. It's the complete package. Like, you get everything in the series.
You do. The only kind of bummer is that the second season very much feels like a bridge between to a final arc. So I really hope we get that final arc.
Yes, same. Like, I didn't quite know what to make of the ending, actually. It was very enigmatic the way it ended, and I think it was supposed to be that way because you don't quite understand what's going on with a lot of these characters, which means we're just going to have to wait, which sucks, but I'm totally willing to do it because the season was so good.
Well, and it's very much a passion project. Like, I'm pretty sure the producer at PA Works, or not the producer, like the head of the studio, basically, loves the novels. So he's like, we're animating these. So my sincere hope is that sort of work of love, labor of love there will kind of guarantee us a third season when/if the final book comes out. So
yeah. In the meantime, we can watch Tatami Galaxy if we haven't already.
Yeah.
I haven't already, and when there's a third season of Eccentric Family, maybe I will watch all of them together.
You should watch both of them now, anyway, because they're still worth it. Oh, also to our listeners, at the mid-season, we were talking about how Eccentric Family Season 1 wasn't available. It's on Crunchyroll now. They got it back.
It is.
You have no excuse. Go watch it.
Depending on which country you're in, you possibly have no excuse.
That's true. That's true. There might be. There are probably some exceptions in there.
I'm just representing non-US here. Yeah, that you might not be available. In the UK,
totally
though,
fair.
it is.
Right.
So I personally have no excuse, which is I feel
right.
what maybe you could have been getting at there.
Anyway,
okay,
it's all
we'll
available.
Watch along.
It's great. Yeah, I love it.
Ooh, watch along would be good.
Yeah, watch along.
I'd be down.
Maybe the answer. That may be what gets me to watch it. Attack on Titan 2. Did you both watch this?
Yep.
Great. I also did. I enjoyed it, I think, more than a lot of people did.
I enjoyed it far and away more than I enjoyed the first season.
Yes.
I didn't even really enjoy the first season, to be honest. Like, I watched it and I was like, I guess I'll try season 2 and see how it goes. And within like 2 episodes, I was like, oh my God, this is really fun and I'm having a good time.
Do you know what, though? I go back to the first season and I watch it now in a completely different context because I actually watched the first season of Attack on Titan in my 10-year break from anime. Basically, the friend who I trapped into watching Kado, she got me to watch Attack on Titan a few years ago. So I watched it then with no context of anime around me, and I thought, like, yeah, this is okay. I'm enjoying it, and watching it with friends was fun. Watching it now, aware of how anime kind of generally is and what broad trends and patterns exist within it, I think the premise that they have and the character designs and everything is really interesting. And I completely understand why it has done as well as it has. And this is just going back to the very beginning and watching those first few episodes. Second half of the season, bit of a bust. Terribly paced. but I really appreciate the first season so much more now. But the second season, I really got into it, and the ending I thought was, I got completely wrapped up in it. I actually rewatched that episode straight away as soon as I finished watching it.
Yeah, I think I don't know which one I liked more. I think the two things I liked about the series were pretty much everybody that's not Eren, and
Yep.
and like the meta plot, history, and like mystery of the story. Because I am like really interested in there's obviously something going on with like the origin of the Titans, and the like something going on with the government and the church hiding it, and the Titans in the wall, whatever.
Yeah.
What's in the basement?
Yeah.
When?
The basement.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the basement. So I'm really interested to see where all that, how it plays out, and I'm really trying to stop myself from just reading the manga and finding out everything and kind of ruining the experience of watching the anime.
Yeah, because the manga is not great. I think the anime is doing a good job of polishing it up and making it more interesting than it actually is when it's on paper. But that's
I've read the early manga. I was okay with it. I don't know. It's very it's kind of its own thing because Araki kind of has his directorial style, which we all saw. It's the same thing as Death Note, really.
Yeah.
Where it's like this hyper dramatic,
very bombastic.
Cliffhanger. It's its own experience. I think I like different things about the manga, but I also like the side characters more.
Oh my gosh,
the ending fell a little flat for me because it kind of reinforced one of the things I least like about the series, which is that a lot of these really great characters are going to be sidelined so that Eren can continue to be the protagonist, specifically Mikasa.
Yes. There is that.
Yeah, I got, especially with the episode where the entire episode was she was just saying, like, I'm not going to show these guys mercy anymore because that every time I do that, it blows up in my face, so I'm just going to kill them, and I'll ask questions later. And then she basically slips on a banana peel. And I just thought it's just not resonant at all with what happened, like with what the episode was setting up, and I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, Mikasa's probably not going to be able to do very many cool things over the course of this series. Yeah. But it's spent a lot of time away from Eren with the way they broke up, so I guess I did like season 2 even more than the original series.
I feel like season 2 acknowledged, and this you kind of got this a little bit in season 1 here and there with where Eren would just be like screaming and everyone would just be like staring at him as if what are you doing? But I feel like this season did kind of a good job of sort of highlighting the fact that Eren is not a good protagonist.
Yeah.
And I mean that, like, I kind of think that's the point. Like, I think he really wants to be like a shonen action hero, and he's not. But they're kind of, and everyone's a little bit disappointed that they're kind of stuck with him, but they are, because he happens to be the one who has like these like latent abilities and this Titan power essentially. And I find the fact that the series leans into that kind of great.
I thought that was hilarious.
And, you mean like the meta stuff they do? Like when the guy was like, we can't possibly win this unless Eren's alive or something like where it was like, I can't remember the guy's name. He immediately got his arm bitten off. Erwin.
Oh, Erwin.
Yeah. He was basically saying the plot of this show is that Eren is going to save us all, so we have to rescue him.
Yeah.
As they were charging forward on their horses. Yeah.
That's great. The scene, like, fairly early when Eren finally gets back into the story and he, like, kills his first Titan, he's so excited and then just immediately beefs it. And then there's this great moment when after he's kind of been captured and they're having like this back and forth conversation talk, and it's getting really intense about like the different sides and stuff. And he and Reiner, like he and Reiner just start like attacking each other. And meanwhile, like, oh god, I'm blanking. Ymir and Bertholdt are having like this very kind of serious conversation about somebody who was dead. And in the background, you just kind of vaguely hear Eren like screaming and flailing while they're having this conversation. And I'm like, that's it. That's the show.
Let's talk for a second about Ymir and Krista. Because that was I think I didn't really appreciate when I first went through just how important that relationship is, and it comes across really extremely queer when you see it actually on the screen.
Yes,
it's lovely. Yeah, I really like the way
it's really lovely, and I was so surprised. Yeah, and they just absolutely lean into it, own it, and say, that's what this is. And there's a moment, isn't there, between I like it when written down. Her name is Ymir, but when they say it, it's Yumiru. So I'm really struggling here with how to actually pronounce her name. But when she and Reiner speak and make vague allusions to her being gay, and she makes a comment about him being gay, but it kind of comes across more snarky than his comment, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's actually any basis for anything, but there's
a not insignificant portion of the fandom that is pretty sure Reiner and Berthold are a thing.
Sure. I'm not shutting that down at
all. I haven't read enough in the manga to be able to say one way or the other. There, no, I think this season did my biggest problem with the first season is I never could connect emotionally to it. And I think this season did a much better job of establishing a lot of different characters with different kind of goals and hopes and the relationships that are important to them and what can kind of keep them going in this nightmare world. Because there's even I think it was the second episode, because the first episode of the season I was like, oh, I'm not going to have a good time. And then I think it's the second one is sort of a Sasha focus episode. And it's about like her initially being kind of a self-centered kid who's like just worried about herself and the people around her and kind of learning to look after others and the importance of kind of taking care of your community. And that was the moment when I went, okay, this is good. There's some emotional like stakes and heft to this now. And so like as the plot got more and more wild and they kept throwing new twists at us this season, they paradoxically kept grounding the characters more in I guess emotional realism to a point. So it was good. I liked that combo of just like out there Titan battles and then these kind of grounded characters and their relationships with each other.
Yeah.
It's this really interesting kind of it alternates between being these high points and these very frustrating points. Mm-hmm. Like I remember, I guess it was near the end of the season. I actually Eren's fight with the Armored Titan, I thought was great, and it actually made me like. I was like, oh, this is a really good moment for Eren. He's doing something cool.
Yeah.
And of course, that was like snatched away from him. But I thought that was like the way the fight played out was really interesting. And like it was Eren actually, I don't know, being like intelligent as well as using his Titan ability. So you're just like, oh, is this a moment for him where he really grows as a character? But then the episode after, I actually found that episode where they're all talking in the treetops to be like immensely frustrating because just like a few points. One of the things. What was it? Reiner said that like he said some line about Eren being unreliable as an ally, and Ymir's like, "Oh yes, that's true." And I'm like, "Yes, that is true. That's totally it. Eren's absolutely not reliable." But Reiner had literally just forgotten whose side he was on. So I was like, Eren, point that out, please. Just say it. Like, this guy literally just forgot whose side he was on. Like, I know you're bad, Eren, but you're not so bad that you forget. You've never gone like, wait, am I on the Titan side? You're pretty clearly on the side of humanity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's got that going for him at least. And then, and
that's a later on,
you can't fault Eren for indecisiveness. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, the fact that he didn't think to say anything like that and everybody just sort of accepted that was a fact, even though it is true, was, like, super... I'm just like, how did that make it past that point in the conversation? Then later on, Ymir... it was basically implied what was going to happen later on, where Ymir kidnaps Krista. And I had just wished that Eren had said something during that conversation about caring about what Krista wants as opposed to her wanting to save Krista. Because they literally have the same relationship with him and Mikasa and Ymir and Krista, where they have somebody who's kind of like overbearing and protective. And in Eren's case, like he does get himself into a lot of dangerous situations, so it's somewhat justified. But I do think Mikasa kind of doesn't really respect how much he really wants to do what he's doing, like how strongly he feels. She's more concerned about just him living under any circumstances. And I wish like that would have made me respect his perspective so much more if he'd said like, you're being just like Mikasa always is, where you don't respect what I want, and if that puts me in danger, that's my choice, or something like that, to kind of contextualize that. And they just like glazed over that opportunity as well. That
is an interesting point.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
it's like high point, low point, high point, low point, and there's like these huge openings for stuff like that to happen. Like I almost can't believe Isayama created those 2 points in the conversation, and just without an awareness that he could have gone in that direction.
I mean, I can, because I don't really have a lot of respect for him particularly. I find issues with his storytelling, his storycraft all the time. I think the stuff he does well, he is amazing at. And then the stuff he doesn't do well, they're pretty big gaps. And the anime can compensate for some stuff, but not others. So I'm not, I really enjoyed Attack on Titan this time through, and I kind of wish it had been a longer series, but actually, given how the second half of the first season was, maybe actually it's better that we don't see that.
Well, and we are getting a season 3 in 2018, I believe.
Yeah, spring 2018, I think.
So.
Only a year.
So yeah, we don't have to wait 5 years again.
It was really weird to have such a long gap for such a popular series. But speaking of long gaps for popular series, Berserk, which I think perhaps in the entire United States, Peter is the only person watching it. So maybe
my roommate is watching it.
Yeah,
you have a friend.
It's just a bunch of really frustrated fans watching it because pretty much. The voice acting is still great. There's actually some really awesome 2D animation that they do during certain episodes. Specifically, usually it's when people are kind of like looking back at their past or some kind of like more impressionistic stuff, which is really cool. It's got, especially in the second season, really great backgrounds illustrated by Studio Kusanagi. So there are all these points that are really cool, and you're kind of re-experiencing it. But yeah, the 3D CG it's an obstacle. And
we're actually doing a watch-along of New Berserk at the moment. Peter's joining me and Cara Dennison. And Cara and I have only seen the 1997 series, so we're working through the New Berserk now. And it's really interesting. It is really interesting. I'm glad that I'm watching it for what it's worth, but it is, I think the barriers to entry are fairly high. I think you have to know the story before you get to this point. You have to have seen the films, or you have to have seen the 97 series to be able to keep up. And I think you have to have a fairly strong tolerance for the animation, which I have a really strong tolerance for terrible animation, and even I get jarred by this. And you have to have a fairly high tolerance, again, for some pretty unpleasant treatment of female characters visually. So all those caveats in place, I'm finding it very interesting, and I'm finding it a very rewarding series to watch, but it's a tough one.
Yep.
Okay, we have now gone through many of our series. We've run quite badly over. Very sorry about that. We would love to hear your views, so please do let us know what you thought of the series and the discussion around it. I appreciate this one has been a little bit patchy, so we hope that you will fill in the gaps for us. A little bit of housekeeping before we wrap it up. You can find us at www.animefeminist.com. We're on Twitter at animefeminist. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/animefem. We have a Tumblr, animefeminist.tumblr.com. And we have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/animefeminist. We are now at over $1,000 in income. Thank you all so much for contributing. We're looking for our next funding goal now of $1,140, which means we pay our editors. So whenever a contributor sends us a piece, a pitch, we have one of the team work with them, and currently this is unpaid. They work with them to craft the outline, get that approved, to craft the actual piece, get that up into the website and format it properly. This is work, and it's currently not paid, and a big cornerstone of AniFem is to pay people fairly for their work. So please, if you can spare $1 a month, it really does add up. I cannot stress that enough. Please go to www.patreon.com/animefeminist and send us that $1 to continue our work. All patrons who support us with $5 or more have access to our private AniFem server on Discord, a fairly recent development. And we have channels for things like general conversation, talk on anime specifically, manga specifically, airing shows, games, Japanese study. It's evolving as we go according to what our patrons actually want. We would love to see you there. So if you can spare $5 or more a month, just get in touch. We'll send you an invite code. We'll get you inside. So thank you so much to Dee and Peter for joining me today. And let us know what you thought of this season in the comments.